92 million jobs gone. That's the number the World Economic Forum put out. 92 million roles projected to be displaced by 2030. But here's the part that almost never makes the headline. In the same report, they project 170 million brand new jobs emerging in that same window. A net gain of 78 million jobs. Today, we're getting into what AI is actually doing to work right now, which industries are most exposed, what the data really says about displacement versus transformation, and what any of us can actually do to stay ahead of it. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer picture of where the real risk is, where the opportunity is hiding, and what skill matters most according to employers. My co-host has been deep in this research, and I want to start with a question that I think a lot of people are genuinely scared to ask out loud.
Is the fear actually justified? Like, should people be worried?
The honest answer is it depends on what you're afraid of. If you're afraid of waking up one day and your entire job just not existing anymore, the data says that's not really how this is playing out, at least not yet. But if you're afraid of your job changing so much that you don't recognize it in 5 years, that fear is completely grounded in reality.
Okay, so walk me through what's actually happening, because the headlines are all over the place.
Right, so the first thing to understand is that researchers actually break AI's impact on work into 3 distinct categories. There's full job replacement, the role just disappears. Then there's task automation, AI handles parts of the job but the human is still there. And then there's workforce restructuring, where you need fewer people to produce the same output. And what the data consistently shows is that most of what's happening right now falls into that second and third category, not the first.
So it's more like your job is getting edited than deleted. That's actually a really good way to put it. And this is important context. AI is not the first technology to do this. The World Economic Forum draws a direct line from electricity to the automobile to the internet. Each of those didn't just improve existing processes, they reorganized entire societies. They reshaped firms, altered cities, redefined what work even meant. AI appears to be the next one in that lineage.
But there's something different about this wave, right? Because the previous ones mostly hit factory floors and physical labor. Exactly. And that's what makes this one genuinely unprecedented. The TIRAA Institute put it really clearly. Unlike previous automation waves that primarily affected blue-collar roles, AI is transforming knowledge-based and cognitive tasks. We're talking about middle to higher-paid professions. Lawyers, analysts, writers, accountants, the people who thought they were safe because they had a degree.
That's a significant shift.
It really is. And the scale of exposure is striking. The IMF's 2024 assessment found that roughly 40% of jobs globally face meaningful exposure to AI capabilities. But in high-income countries, places like the UK, the US, Germany, that number climbs to around 60%.
Wait, 60%? So more than half of jobs in wealthy economies have meaningful AI exposure?
According to the IMF, yes. And that doesn't mean 60% of jobs are going away. It means 60% of jobs have tasks that AI can meaningfully engage with, which is a very different thing, but still a massive number.
So which jobs are actually most at risk? Like if someone's listening right now and they're in a specific field, what should they know?
The research is pretty consistent here. Financial services, information technology, and administrative support consistently score highest for AI automation risk. We're talking data entry clerks, administrative assistants, payroll processors, basic bookkeeping, customer service reps. AI excels at repetitive, rule-based tasks, and those roles are full of them.
And on the other end, who's relatively protected?
Industries requiring physical presence and genuine human interaction score lowest. Healthcare, construction, emergency services. You can't automate a paramedic or a plumber in the same way you can automate a data entry workflow. The physical and relational dimensions of those jobs are still very much a human domain.
Okay, so let's get into the actual numbers, because I think this is where it gets really interesting and also where people get confused. What does the most current data actually show about employment?
So S&P Global published a major report in June 2026, literally just weeks ago, and it showed something that's a real shift from what they found in 2025. AI's employment impact has turned modestly negative. Their Purchasing Managers Index survey showed a global net impact of negative 5 percentage points over the past 12 months.
Negative 5 percentage points. What does that actually mean in plain terms?
It means that when you subtract the percentage of businesses that increased their workforce because of AI from the percentage that decreased it, you get a net negative of 5 points. More companies are trimming headcount due to AI than are adding people because of it. and they're forecasting another negative 2 points in the coming year.
So the tide is turning a little.
Modestly, yes. But here's the crucial nuance from that same S&P report. When they looked at what companies are actually prioritizing with AI, only 24% listed headcount reduction as an objective. The top priorities were process efficiency at 64% and employee productivity at 59%. Job cuts are a secondary consequence, not the primary goal.
So companies aren't sitting in boardrooms going, how do we fire people with AI? They're going, how do we get more done?
Exactly. And that distinction matters enormously for how you think about your own career. The threat isn't a robot with your name on a list. It's a workflow that gets redesigned and suddenly needs fewer hands.
There's actually a really concrete example of this that I came across, a company called Vuban in Quebec. Can you talk about what happened there?
Yeah, Vuban is a great case study because it shows both sides of this at once. They're a tech company that specializes in AI, and they've been rolling it out across every department. In their marketing team, one person now manages 9 social media accounts compared to 2 before. That's a 4.5x productivity increase from AI agents.
Okay, so that's the productivity story. But what about the job loss side?
So they did eliminate a content writing position, but then, and this is the part that really stuck with me, they reopened that same position because they needed someone to optimize content specifically for large language models. The human touch became more strategic, not less necessary, just in a completely different direction.
That's wild. The job came back, but it was a different job. And Hugues Foltz, the executive vice president at Vuban, said something that I think captures this whole moment really well. He said, yes, some jobs are disappearing, but more importantly, we are seeing new opportunities emerge that did not exist before. And what's interesting is that the Bank of Canada's data actually backs this up at a macro level. Nearly 90% of Canadian companies that adopted AI reported no impact on employment levels, and about 4% reported job creation.
So the Bank of Canada is essentially saying the same thing, transformation over elimination. For now, yes, though the S&P data suggests that's starting to shift. And there's also a really interesting counterpoint from Yale's Budget Lab, which published an analysis literally 2 days ago, June 15th, 2026. They found that measures of AI usage currently show no clear connection to changes in employment or unemployment at the macro level.
Wait, so the Yale Budget Lab is saying they can't even see an AI footprint in the labor market data yet?
That's what they found. The occupational mix isn't changing in ways that clearly align with AI adoption, which is either reassuring or a sign that the real disruption is still coming and we just haven't felt it yet. They were careful to say they're going to keep updating the analysis.
So we have S&P saying the employment impact is turning negative and Yale saying they can't see a clear footprint yet. That's a real tension.
It is, and I think it reflects where we actually are, in the middle of something that's moving faster than our ability to measure it cleanly. The S&P data is coming from business surveys, the Yale data is looking at macro labor statistics. They're measuring different things, and both are probably capturing part of the truth.
Let's talk about the finance sector specifically, because I think that's one a lot of our listeners are either in or adjacent to.
Finance is a fascinating case. AI started reshaping it years ago through algorithmic trading, but generative AI has massively accelerated the pace. Machine learning models are now analyzing massive datasets, simulating economic scenarios, automating routine reporting. The roles most at risk are entry-level and junior positions, the ones that used to be the training ground for careers.
That's a real problem, right? Because those junior roles are how people learn the craft.
Absolutely. But at the same time, new hybrid roles are emerging: AI automation engineers in finance, AI governance, and compliance managers. The Forbes analysis on this was clear. Instead of eliminating careers entirely, AI is reshaping job descriptions and elevating what it means to be an expert. The people who adapt by developing both technical skills in data analytics and soft skills like strategic communication are the ones who will thrive.
And McKinsey's Global Institute director actually made a similar point about the legal sector just this week, right?
Yeah, Tanguy Catlin from McKinsey spoke at a major M&A conference in New York on June 16th, literally yesterday, and his message was that law firms and legal departments that embrace AI strategically are likely to see increased demand for legal talent, not widespread replacement. His argument was that AI transforms how legal work is performed, but the firms that benefit most will be those that redesign their operations and invest in new skills.
So the pattern keeps repeating. It's not about the technology, it's about how you respond to it.
And the scale of investment flowing into this is staggering. Catlin cited projections of approximately $7 trillion being invested globally in AI infrastructure between January 2026 and January 2029. Amazon, Google, Apple are among the principal investors. Around 2,600 data centers are projected to be built in the US alone, consuming about 12% of the nation's electricity supply.
12% of the US electricity supply. That's not a trend, that's a structural shift.
It really is. And Sam Altman from OpenAI actually captured the trajectory well. He said there was a time when people talked about being a mobile company after the iPhone App Store launched. But now, no software company says they're a mobile company because it'd be unthinkable not to have a mobile app. He's saying AI is heading in the same direction. It'll just be an expected, obvious part of every product and service.
So the question isn't whether AI becomes embedded in work. It's already happening. The question is what that means for the people doing the work.
Exactly. And this is where the skills gap conversation becomes really urgent. The TIAAA Institute's analysis found that 59% of the global workforce will require skill changes by 2030. But here's the alarming part. Nearly half of employees report inadequate AI training support from their employers.
So the majority of workers need to change their skills, but half of them aren't getting the training to do it.
And the UK government's own data reinforces this. The Department for Science, Innovation and Technology commissioned an AI labour market survey published in January 2026, and 97% of respondents identified at least one skills gap in the AI labour market. 57% reported a technical skills gap. The most significant gap was in understanding AI concepts and algorithms, and that gap has actually grown over the past 5 years.
97% is basically everyone.
It's a near universal problem, and 28% of those organizations said technical skills shortages had already impacted their ability to achieve business goals. This isn't a future problem, it's a right now problem.
So what are the companies that are actually getting this right doing differently?
BCG published a really illuminating study on this. Their Build for the Future analysis found that only about 5% of organizations have managed to reap substantial financial gains from AI. And what separates those companies from everyone else is fascinating. They found that only about 10% of AI's value comes from the algorithms themselves. Another 20% comes from the technology to implement them. The remaining 70% comes from rethinking the people component.
Wait, 70% of AI's value comes from the people side, not the technology?
That's what BCG found. And the companies winning at AI are upskilling more than 50% of their employees on AI, compared to just 20% for the laggards. They're 4 times more likely to have structured AI learning programs and to carve out protected time for employees to actually learn. It's not just about buying the tools, it's about building the human capacity to use them.
That's a really different framing than what you usually hear. The conversation is always about the AI, but the real differentiator is the people strategy.
And there's a parallel problem on the HR side. The 2026 CHRO survey report found that 47% of chief human resources officers haven't established clear productivity measurements for AI, even as 91% name AI among their top priorities this year. So companies are racing to adopt AI without even knowing how to measure whether it's working.
That's a bit of a mess, honestly.
It is, and it creates real risk. Forbes HR Council contributor Maria Colacurcio made the point that companies moving fastest on AI are discovering something uncomfortable. They were never designed to govern workforce decisions at this speed or scale. The technology is moving faster than the organizational structures built to manage it.
There's also something worth flagging here. Not all AI deployments are even working. The adoption rate is high, but the success rate isn't.
That's a really important point. S&P Global's data showed that only 46% of AI initiatives launched in the past year are deemed on track to achieve positive ROI within 12 months, and only 37% are assessed as live and actually delivering value. So there's a massive gap between AI adoption and AI actually working.
So more than half of AI projects are either failing or underperforming.
Which is why the S&P report concluded that AI's capacity to replace labor is constrained by real delivery challenges, trust, data quality, skills. The technology may be advancing faster than organizations can reliably deploy it. That's actually a moderating force on the displacement narrative.
And there's also the question of what AI is actually being used for day to day. Like, what are the most common use cases right now?
S&P tracked 38 AI use cases and found the average current adoption rate is 50%. The most widely adopted are summarization at 71%, translation at 62%, and data management at 61%. These are augmentative tools. They make humans faster and more capable. And critically, only 22% of AI projects target a fully autonomous end state. The vast majority still require human oversight.
So the fully autonomous, humans not needed scenario is actually a minority of what's being built.
For now. And that aligns with what the Warwick Institute for Employment Research found in their UK labour market projections commissioned by the government. They projected that nearly all of the 2.5 million job increases expected in the UK from 2020 to 2035 will be in skilled, white-collar, non-manual work. Almost 90% of net employment growth is expected in professional and associate professional roles.
So the jobs being created are skewing toward higher skilled work, which is great if you have those skills and really concerning if you don't.
That's the equity dimension of this that doesn't get enough attention. A Mangalore University study that reviewed 432 research papers on AI and the future of work found that workers whose jobs are replaced may struggle to find new roles that require advanced technical skills and that can deepen divides in income and opportunity. The growth is real, but it's not automatically inclusive.
And the UK government's own skills projections show that administrative and secretarial roles and skilled trades are expected to decline. So the people in those roles are facing a real transition challenge.
Right. Though the Warwick report made an important caveat, even in occupations where a decline in the number of jobs is projected, replacement demand still means there will be job openings. People retire, people leave the workforce. So it's not a cliff edge, it's a gradual shift. But the direction is clear.
Let's also talk about what skill actually matters most right now. Because there's a lot of noise about learn to code or learn prompt engineering. What does the research actually say?
The TIAA Institute's analysis was really clear on this. Analytical thinking emerges as the most essential core skill, with 70% of employers considering it critical. Not a specific technical tool, not a programming language, the ability to think analytically, to reason through problems, evaluate information, make sound judgments. That's what employers are saying they need most.
That's actually kind of reassuring, because analytical thinking is something you can develop regardless of your background.
And the World Economic Forum's research on this draws a really useful historical parallel. They point out that electricity transformed economies once engineers and technicians could deploy it at scale. The internet became economically transformative once digital skills spread beyond a small technical elite. AI follows the same logic. Its economic impact hinges on whether workers and firms can acquire and apply the skills needed to make it productive.
So the technology alone doesn't transform anything. It's the diffusion of skills that makes it real.
Exactly. And we're seeing that play out in hiring data right now. The WEF's research shows a steep rise in online job vacancies explicitly requesting AI-related skills. Labor markets are responding to AI adoption in real time. The demand signal is already there.
Okay, so when you step back from all of this, the S&P data, the WEF projections, the BCG findings, the VUBAN story, what's the actual through line here?
Here's what this really comes down to. The question, will AI take your job, is the wrong question. The more accurate question is, will AI change your job, and are you positioned to change with it? Because the data is pretty consistent, AI is transforming work far more than it is eliminating it. But that transformation is uneven. It's accelerating, and the gap between workers who adapt and workers who don't is going to widen.
And the companies that are actually winning with AI aren't the ones with the best algorithms, they're the ones investing in their people.
BCG's finding that 70% of AI value comes from the people component is the most important data point in this whole conversation, in my view. The organizations treating AI as purely a technology problem are leaving most of the value on the table. And the workers treating it as purely a threat are missing the opportunity that's sitting right in front of them.
There's also something worth sitting with here. The skills gap is real and urgent. 59% of the workforce needing new skills by 2030, and nearly half not getting adequate training. That's not a personal failure. That's a systemic gap that employers and governments need to close.
And the UK government's AI labour market survey found that apprenticeships into AI careers have risen from 3% of AI hires in 2020 to 19% in 2025. That's a signal that alternative pathways are opening up. You don't need a computer science degree to be part of this transition, but you do need to be actively building skills, not waiting for the disruption to arrive.
So what's the one thing someone listening right now should actually do?
Start with analytical thinking. That's what 70% of employers say is the most critical skill. Then look at where AI is already embedded in your industry and get hands-on with those tools, not to become a developer, but to understand what they can and can't do. The people who will thrive are the ones who can work alongside AI, direct it, and catch its mistakes. That requires human judgment, not just technical fluency.
And if you're a manager or a leader, the BCG data is pretty clear that the companies winning at AI are the ones where managers are actually using it themselves, not just mandating it from above.
BCG found that 88% of managers at high-performing AI companies actively incorporate AI into their daily decision-making, versus just 25% at laggards. Leadership by example isn't just good culture. In this context, it's a competitive advantage.
All right, so we started with 92 million jobs displaced and 170 million created. And I think what this conversation has really shown is that those numbers aren't destiny. They're a range of outcomes, and where you land in that range depends enormously on what you do between now and 2030.
The story is still being written. Yale's Budget Lab literally said 2 days ago that they can't yet see a clear AI footprint in the labor market data, which means we're in the window where the choices being made right now by workers, by companies, by governments, are the ones that will determine how this plays out.
The question was never really, will AI take your job? The better question is, are you building the skills to claim one of those 170 million new ones? That's the frame that actually gives you agency in this. Thanks for being here for this one.